Let's say you're like me and you've been playing RTS games for 30 years. You might have picked up a few habits by now. Some of the biggest strategy game releases, for example, StarCraft and StarCraft 2, revel in the fact you can't actually automate any of the commands. And how people used to get ahead in the StarCraft games, they'd actually make macros on their keyboard to just tie everything together and just to get that one leg up on the competition. Now, fortunately, in Beyond All Reason, has looked past that useless meta into the realm of creating what's called quality of life, or just making it easier to do repetitive functions. Basically, you don't have to level up your RSI in your clicky finger to essentially play the game. So first of all, we're going to make this Keybinds video with a few tips. Even if you're super experienced, you're going to pick up one thing out of this because I had a really good deep dive on it and some examples of what you can do with the Keybinds. The Keybinds list from Beyond All Reason is fantastic. It's pretty heavy reading for most of us, and I've only just read it comprehensively, and oh my god. So I had to tie it together with examples, and I think this is going to help you guys a lot. If you find there's anything I've missed or you really appreciate the video, either way, let me know in the comments, and hey, I'll bring out another video at some stage. So yeah, let's begin. First of all, Grid is better than Legacy, apparently, according to the internet. I don't have any opinion on this. I just happened to pick Grid because it was the slightly newer thing. I know a lot of players play Legacy, so Legacy is what the game was when it was first released, and now you've essentially got the much improved Grid, which correlates to keyboard commands. So you can go Z, X, C, V, and I think you can even go like this is A. I might be wrong. Like, let's go Z, A, right? You can go into each one Z, A, and over a long time anyway, you will remember what these different keybinds are, and so you don't have to worry about moving your mouse and clicking, especially like with your commander, a ZA, get to energy converters, a ZC, get to these guys. It's just so easy when you do shortcuts, whereas having to click all the time is a little bit troublesome. So if we go over to Legacy, we can see it's all of a sudden not so easy. There's no particular keybind. I have to go over and click on this. And look, I can't even click on it. It's disabled. Okay, there's no wind. All right, guys. So the Legacy is even smarter than the Grid. The Grid, you can actually shoot yourself in the foot. So let's go over to energy here. So you have to go over and pick that. Wow, that was embarrassing. I just tried to get a map here of nice purple pyramids, and I wasn't thinking that would actually have no wind, and there we go. We're into our solar only playstyle, and we have to click. There's no shortcut, whereas usually if we're in Grid for wind, we'd go ZX. It's just much quicker to do, trust me. It's much quicker. So although we can use hotkeys here in the Grid system for building with our constructor, we can also use the Grid system with our factory build list, and it's much quicker to actually hit the keys on the keyboard to just pump out a few units, particularly once we get used to this. And repeat on and off is T, so it's just easy to hit that rather than hit the repeat. Interestingly, it doesn't come off too easily, it's only toggles on. So there you go. Low priority, high priority, it doesn't have a shortcut, so if we want to click it over, we actually have to manually select that. This is very good when we want to focus on a unit. A lot of people don't use this, I don't think. So if you can master high priority for what you're actually doing, you're going to produce the right things at the right time, basically. It's going to improve your play 100% by just using that high priority. You should be playing a multiplayer game that you're always out of resources, ideally. Changing around the priority is probably one of the most important things. I'll have to do a video on it and how it's actually useful. It's too big for this video. Now, high-low priority does not have a keybind for whatever reason, because of how important it is, so it might be neglected a little bit, but it can be also put on your constructor. Now, your main constructor is always at high priority, and so are your constructors. So whenever you're building something that's a little bit not needed, your constructors well could be stuffing up your whole build order. If these guys are running around building windmills, say, and you need to quickly build up some units to defend your line, well, guess what? This is on low priority. And so, in general, I would recommend if you get to a certain level where you've got some spare APM and you do the base building, actually switch these guys to low priority. Let's build one of them, see if it stays on low priority. Nope. So all the time you have to go back to low priority. Doesn't seem right, does it? So let's say you want to change the priority of all your T1 constructors. just to make sure your factories are getting the only high priority allocation of resources. Well, Control W will set you off well there. Now it'll do it on the whole map. So we can see this constructor is selected as well, and we can change it to low priority. Now let's take one to high priority and see how the toggling works. So I've got a couple of here that have come out with high priority. We go Control W. We switch to low priority. Everything switched to low priority. We go Control W. We select high priority. They're all suitably switched. So although constructors themselves are set onto high priority as default, the construction turrets are actually set to low priority. So when they assist and repair, they get a lower allocation of resources. The real big meta advice I've received when it comes to scaling and actually surviving is to either build military units or AFUS line. For example, I'm finding in practice that's pretty much impossible to optimize your base building, optimize your queues, hit all your timings, and then to just randomly stop one constructor building. I mean, you're building blueprints, right? You can't just stop that. Even if you hit the wait command, it still takes a little while to maybe finish constructing the AFUS, right? And then you've got all the construction turrets and everything like that. So I think just using the priority is a better way of switching between the military and eco. It's just such a pity it doesn't have a keybind. I'm sure you could go into the custom text and change that. If you guys want to see a video on editing the custom key commands, hit me up. I've done it before. It is extremely confusing. I don't know if anyone does it or gets any utility from it. I just stick with the grid system. So a good example of where you need a high priority unit is whenever you're building Mexes, make sure the guys are switched onto high priority then. I mean, the Mexes, especially the T1 Mexes, only cost 50 metal, so you don't want to hold up the resources being spent there. Whereas over here, where we're building some advanced solar collectors, are not so important, so low priority is great. Advanced solar collectors are imperative on maps with no wind, but they are resource hogs. Another powerful one for factories is the wait command. Why? Now notice it doesn't stop the building right away, but it will after building this unit. So if you've got a Titan or a Juggernaut or something like that, you need to be mindful of that won't actually stop the construction right away, but G will. If you do G, bam, it's all over. Actually, apart from the current one getting constructed, go figure that. Very easy to clear. So what you can also do is Quota Mode, and this can help you overbuilding. Now that's switched on by Alt-G, which is a bit of an awkward key. You might as well just click on Quota Mode, to be honest with you. Especially at the beginning of the game where you only want a certain amount of Centurions, for example, only want a certain amount of Rocketeers, but you want it to rebuild at the front. You want to say have 10 Rocketeers, 2 Centurions, one of them goes down. You want the factory to build another one. This is absolutely overpowered, and I had no idea about this before this video, so maybe you guys have learned that, the Quota Mode. Factory Guard. Builders produced by this factory will automatically guard it. Now, this is a little bit in the weeds, so guard is not guard as you might think. What that means is if I build a constructor bot, it will put its construction power on the bot lab rather than just sit there or go to a rally point, I imagine. So if we put a rally point here, we take off factory guard and I build another construction bot. Let's have a look what that will do. As we super build it, it comes out. Does it go to the rally point? Yes, it does. Can be useful to actually toggle that one as well, because we don't always want to factory guard things. And that's done by Control G. A little bit easier than Alt G on the keyboard to get to. Also, we can not just right click for a rally point, we can queue up the rally point pathing, so it goes on a circumnavigator's route. We can attack fight, so we can do this, and then we can shift click the attack fight. So we can sit back and fire on the enemy without going too far into the enemy's range. We can patrol like usual, which is better, to be honest with you, if you go rally point out to it, otherwise it'll go back to the factory, right? So you right click out to it and then set up a patrol line. Interestingly, we can't move again. It cancels that move button if we do that. Oh no, must have done control. That's interesting as. I just want to try something, right? So let's set up a patrol here and then we'll do a movement point. What does this actually do? Okay, so he does the move action, comes back. So it does one solitary move action and then forgets about that move action, which is what we'd expect. Sort of useless. Yeah, sort of useless. But it's interesting. I had no idea you could set up a move after a patrol. So the most basic command of all, if you're trying to come up with a little force to work with, is of course set it to a control group. Now, control 1, for example. As an old RTS player, I'm double clicking, I'm control grouping them in. That's what I do. I love to do it all manually because it's just years of experience, but you don't actually need to do that. In fact, it's poor form to do that. It's an unnecessary task. What we're going to do here is show you the use of Alt 1. It keeps on populating the control group automatically. How good's that? Now, of course, this is super basic stuff, but some of you will not realize that that's actually the case. Let's do that once more. Yeah, we can see a little 1 come up around here. I encourage you guys to do that as good practice because what it means is you don't have any lost units at a rally point or anything like that. You always have this production of units. Let's say you've got the capped amount of build here. Well, that means your Rocketeers even back in the base will receive the same commands, so you're all on the same page. So what if we need to take one of these out of a control group? Well, we simply control click on it, and then we control 1 again to form that new group. Now, the new units will still populate the group, whereas this one on its lonesome won't. Now, why this is powerful is because we can send this back for repairs. Okay, so if we've got a staging area where we repair units, this is more useful in T3, of course. We can do that with this free unit. Another command, I don't know how useful it is. Let's say you have 2 things in the control group, like Centurions and Pawns. Oh, by the way, we want to create a Centurion. It automatically gets added to the group now. So I didn't have to Alt 1 the Centurions in one bit. But let's say we only want to have Pawns in the group, control group 1. We click on the Centurion and we go Alt Tide. We go back to 1, it gets rid of the Centurions. So if you've got a bit of a mixed force and you just want to get rid of, for whatever reason, one of the units, you can also do this. You don't need to do Alt Tide. We can go Q here, add them all in, and then we get the Centurions and we go, oh, we want them in another hotkey group. We go Alt 2 and we build the new Centurion. Yeah, it's in number 2. Now notice, because we haven't Alt 2'd yet, it's not adding any of them to the Centurion. So when you create a new control group, you've got to Alt 2 them in as well to get the auto build up. It's a little bit clunky, but it's just the way the rules are set. It's not like any conspiracy, I think. All right, so another one that's a really good mechanical key that you might not use is Q, to just get everything on the screen. So an example of Q being really useful in a pinch is if we want to create our own individual army groups that are on different parts of the screens with combined arms, essentially. We want to select all the same units on the screen. We can go Q and put them all over here, and we can control these into 3. And these ones over here that are spread throughout the screen, we can Q, and then we can put them in its own subgroup. So we've got 3, and then we've got 4. And let's say we get a few more units that come over here that are the same type. We press Q, and we can include them in the new subgroup. So it's just very easy for quickly getting all units on the screen and organizing them, essentially. Q is useful for control Q, which is split. So we can halve the units selected with this. Where this is really useful is for super tactical maneuvers and using it with formations. So if we're using it with formations here, we've suddenly got a little bit of depth to what we've got of 2 lines, which is usually all you need. It can be very useful for air wars, where we want to essentially create a bit of depth with our bombing fleet, and we don't just want them in a massive broad line that necessarily picking up too much flak along the sides. We want to create something with a little bit of width, but a little bit of depth as well. So you can't all be targeted by fighters. We do that by Control Q. It's also good for when you're defending as fighters against enemy bombing fleets, you can send the fighters to the bombers one half, the other half you can send just to generally where the fighters are coming up. With one half, you can micro them to click on all the bombers manually, and the other half of fighters you can just send on a straight fight command, so the fighters don't just kill all your fighters all at once. So it can be really useful for quick tactical commands. Quite often you'll find if you just do a split movement like this into the enemy base, and you've got a lot of units as well, where split Q comes in useful, is they actually are very condensed together, particularly starlights. There might only be room for this many, and they chain react along this line that you only have room for. Well, that's when Q is really good, and you move some starlights up here and some starlights there, and it's just a little bit more dispersed. Put them in formation, away we go. If we want to select idle constructors or factories, we can see them all down here, ready to be clicked on. I encourage you guys just to click on them. It's better if you right click, it'll go to them. And we can just left click if we're away. And let's say we're on a front line up here and we want a T1 constructor, doesn't matter where it is because we're not super hassled for time. We don't really care where it's coming from. Well, we can select it, left click, and then build our defense. The same with the Lazarus show up here as well. So we don't necessarily need a control group for Lazarus. We can always select them here. Oh, by the way, if you ever want to select an idle, if it's assigned to a factory, it won't come up as idle. That's including the commander. Now, the commander simply comes up as tab. If you didn't know that, wow. Well, I didn't know it. Just assigning him to like group 6 or something. So yeah, the commander is tab. Now the constructors here, they're sitting there by themselves. So we want to select them quickly and cycle through them. Control tab does that. It actually cycles through anything, not just constructors. So I don't know how useful this is. I guess where it is useful is if you try and always keep your constructor units busy and you've just got a small glut of things not being used, you can just control tab. It's something to quickly do. Like you're APM in your front line, you simply control tab. Okay, what can I do with this guy? Now it does move the cursor to him. And that way you don't even have to think. You don't have to have any decision paralysis on what do I do next. You just control tab. Oh, I've got to do something with this constructor now. Okay. So it is good for an APM key, actually. I'll take it back. It's very useful. Now, the one issue I have always have is finding my T2 constructor, because the T2 constructor's usually queued up to the guilds. Set that on a keybind like Control 6 and manually switch over to that one. But your T2 constructor probably needs to be switched on to high priority. Okay, great. Move in formation. Now this one is quite powerful in actuality. It makes sure all your units, pawns or otherwise, move in a formation-like way. It's not that simple a command. You sort of have to prep for it. So you might prep for this by splitting your forces and then putting one behind the other, waiting until they actually get to that point. Because if we go, right, let's just go over here and we'll now move this in formation, we'll see it doesn't get the future commands. We've actually got to move everything to the proper place and then we move it up. So your lines need to form up, is the military parlance. Now, the power of commands with T, with unit commands, is very powerful in that you can repeat certain basic orders that might only happen once. So you're not stuck on patrol, which has its own issues. Your units will stop to fire, for example. So although it's great for fighters, for ground units, you generally want to keep them moving as they fire. And fighters in the sky will tend to not stop as they shoot. So anything's more vulnerable unless you've got certain set pieces which require to stop while they're shooting, like Mexes. So to avoid this issue with having your unit stop, you can use shift click and put repeat on. Now you can put repeat on before the units get to their objective and it will still hold, and it holds on your last order. So if you shift click something like a D-gun, it'll actually wait till it gets to its last order and then it will launch a D-gun. And then it will go back. Let's say we want to create a trench line. So let's do this for a good long while. I'd say 20 would about do it. But then there's always this spot here where it's not quite there yet. So it divots it out in the mid zone of the D-gun. So from about here to here is where that trench line is made, and it takes about 10. Maybe there's certain spots which can't actually stop the ground getting cut away. There we go. So we have to be a little bit careful getting too close to the geographical bit in question. Still, look how this trench line really stuffs up his pathing. That's going to slow them down a fair bit. So the commander making a trench line, it's going to be a meta thing in future games. I'm not sure if it's there yet, ever since Conqueror's video on it, where I learnt about it. But this is actually extremely powerful. And why shouldn't it be? It's terrain. We're just changing the terrain, and it's a very slow process. Like, you got to do it this much to create a decent trench line. And we can't really afford to do this right on the front line. As soon as they see what we're doing, they're going to attack our commander if they possibly can. Especially in T2, this will be very dangerous for us. So let's say we've created an artificial choke point with our commander digging out this trench system here, and we want to fire on the only spot that's really available for enemies to walk through, which is this point. We use A, attack ground. Best use of A is to find the choke points and hit it. Now, a smart human player will recognise this danger and will not even try to enter this, which is the best form of defence though. What you can do that's very powerful is, generally speaking, ambassadors can only attack from certain angles. So let's say we've got this set up here where this is the only entrance the enemy can really come through. Let's say we've really gone to town with our commander and the only spot they can enter is right here. We've got 10 fat boys firing onto this spot. It's crazy stuff, and all our defences focused in on this little area. And let's say we get attacked by ambassadors. What we're going to do is identify any ambassador movements with our air scouts, probably continuously built because they're going to get shot down. We're then going to press something called Set Target S. We're going to set target on that ambassador. And what it essentially is going to do... Oh look, set target here. Set target also changes the bit of ground. That's very interesting. So you can make it attack ground. Let's do this. Let's go right click. We'll repeat. Oh, look at this. This is how you fire and move. So attack ground doesn't work, but set target does. Oh, that's phenomenal. I had no idea. So if we right click, we've got repeat on. We then set target here. It is then going to continuously fire as it moves. Holy hell. Isn't that a lot better? Now, the one thing you do about targeting one little focused area like this, it's actually going to depress it so much units won't be able to move through here anyway, so something to keep in mind. So set target is super powerful, and it hits all the same category of units if you select a unit with S. But when you destroy the unit you set target to, it will then default back to no target. So you need to be a little bit more micro-intensive. It's less strategic. You can't just go, oh, I want it to hit all bombers, say, or all fighters. It doesn't really work in that way. Let's say we've got the problem of long-range air defense, and we can see the bombers coming in as they come in. Now, S is going to work until that initial bomber is destroyed, and then it clears it and just starts firing back at fighters. I guess you have to spam it as the bombers move in to the next bomber, to the next bomber, and it will prioritize that target S that you've set, but it will still fire first at that category of units. So something to keep in mind, that's the rule set of how you use set target. Actually, after all my testing here, guys, see how that trench actually disappeared. So if there's enough different damage happening, your weird trench system won't work anymore. So yeah, I wouldn't rely on that. So we're going to start attack here of 15 Hounds against all these Stouts and see how we go. Let's say we get a little bit too close to this line and we're only moving away now. We're trying to aggro the majority of them. There we go. Let's try and move away from this force. Well, not looking good, is it? Few of them. We've got 6 surviving. The Stouts are just merciless coming after us. Essentially, we've done very little casualties here. We can see maybe a couple of Stouts went down from that. We have this force here. And then we're going to move them around with control click. And that's how we're going to start our attack. Notice they're all matching speed. and navigating the wrecks as best they're able to. They're still going to group up a little bit. It's just what's going to happen with the pathing. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to try and aggro these guys across the line and withdraw the best we're able to the right. You can see the Gunslingers here, much better tank than the Hounds. We're able to absolutely annihilate this. Of course, if it wasn't such a big force, we'd be able to see the Gunslingers be able to repair and be true skirmishers. But still, we've done okay here. Despite the fact the whole force moves a bit slower, we're able to then withdraw a little bit faster by not doing formation, and then we do the formation move again as the Gunslinger gets where we want him. Just an absolute massive heap of wrecks that we were able to accomplish, and I think in the end it's game over. Now let's say we have to fly over some pretty arduous AA here. Now this is a ridiculous amount of AA you would actually face in a multiplayer game, but let's see how the two compare for survivability anyway, because we've only got 16 Wasps here. We're going to conduct an attack of a simple point where we're just sort of flying through to an area. We're not considering it all. We start off as a bit of a line, but as you can see, we're slowly resolving into a point. So this, oh no, our Lazarus are getting shot down here. Tight point movement. Funnily enough, the actual central Wasps survive. One actually makes it through. I had some secondary Jaguar AA here, which worked. So that actually worked better than I thought. There we go. But what we're going to do now is we're going to use formations. So how we quickly organise this is CTRL Q. So what we're going to do here is make two lines so we can make sure this is fairly dispersed. It doesn't make a perfect force, that's for sure. It's a bit imperfect. This lovely formation is going to fly over the AA, and let's see how we go. So we are coalescing on a point here. We've got reasonable spacing. This isn't the best formation I could come up with. We're also flying over this little pyramid, of course. It's not ideal. Yeah, as we move through, we can see there's a little bit of an improvement. You know what? It was a little bit better. I would say maybe 20% better against AA. So now we're just going to move through as a line move. Let's just see how that goes. So we're not coalescing towards a point, we're just moving as a straight line rather than two lines. Let's see how this goes. Poor old Lazarus. Getting hit. Still got 20 AA vehicles. Pretty similar result. I would argue overall it's maybe slightly better to put it into two different squadrons, but I wouldn't worry about it too much. A single line spaced out seems to be the best. It seems to be about 20-25% better against AA. Particularly though, if you have a single point, what's dangerous about moving towards a point as the Wasps is when the Wasps group all into one unit, then that single point can get taken out right away. So it's generally always better to keep formation as air. We're now going to try out and see how we go with bombers, because bombers are the worst of the worst for going towards the point. So let's see how we go with that. So we've got 10 strategic bombers here, and we're going to move into a singular attack. We're designating here a attack run just here with our attack right click. I imagine it should hit all these points. Let's see. So this is typically how a bombing fleet will approach the anti-air. Everything taken out really efficiently, despite the fact strategic bombers are actually pretty good against anti-air. They should be, right? But they all got taken down. So let's now use formations. Now what we can do is actually, I guess, queue up the orders. So we can go to here, we'll retain formation, and then we will do our attack on a point. So we'll do our formation to here, then we'll shift click into an attack here. I see that doesn't work as straightforward as I thought it would. But at least we're going to see what a dispersed line more so will look like against the AA line. Taking down the bombers pretty quickly, but still a few are getting through. Out of the 10, 2 managed to make it, which is actually not bad. They could do a lot of damage, particularly against energy converters and what have you. So quite often it is common to focus your bombers all in on one point, and once you've scouted where their AFUS is, you might move along a formation path and then shift click A into that AFUS. That will attack that one AFUS then. Kaboom, job well done. If you have enough bombers, of course. But let's say your enemy has a lot of dispersed middling units like wind farms, construction turrets. Nothing's too advanced in the game. So particularly a good T1 bombing around the 10 to 15 minute mark. Let's see how that might progress. So I've got slightly more medals worth of T1 bombers, but that's simply because they're a lot more vulnerable to AA. Otherwise, I don't think we'd have any hope of breaking through. We're going to set these out in a single line. The most dispersed line we can think of. And then we're going to essentially look at doing a point attack. So we're going to look at doing a attack throughout the whole base. Just take down everything we can. Let's say we're even bombing blind, right? We know where their rough location is. We just want to make sure we hit something worth value. So we're going to go to here, in formation, then Shift A, right click throughout the whole base. Let's see how we go with that. Interestingly, not really moving in a formation, is it? A little bit rebellious, a couple of upstarts taking off early. Funnily enough, a lot of them get through. I did not expect so many to get through. So although that was 4,500 worth of metal in bombers, I was pretty happy with that. And it just goes to show when people do bombing runs, they group the bombers up too much and are surprised by AA. Whereas if you simply shift formation click just before you tend to do the bombing run, then conduct your actual attack once you're over the base, that's a better way to go rather than grouping up. Even against 20 Archangels, plenty of T1 bombers got through. Okay, I want to show you guys now how we can quickly split our forces to affect a surround and how useful that might be. We're going to start to proceed forward with the formation move. And we're going to use that. And then we're going to get these Jaguars. We're going to split them. We're going to send half this way. Okay, this is the first test where we don't split our units. We're going to affect a surround best we're able to, just with all our units. Should sort of work good enough. We've done a circle here. They're starting to freak out. Move back, so we're going to move around them. Doing everything we can micro-wise to stymie them. Hit them from all angles. Micro 101 here, guys. Let's bring them all in. So we're definitely still using formations here. Get that surround. It's the last holdout. It's quite interesting, really. So yeah, I don't know if that was just our excellent micro or the fact we're incorporating Jaguars. Very similar metal mix. Clearly came out on top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a force come over here. I'm going to Control Q. And we're going to have a force come over there. Pretty crazy, right? These guys now can move out this way. And these guys can move around here. So we're attacking sort of a full surround. But they're attacking different units. So it's not an actual surround. Because there's so many damn tanks. We haven't been able to affect that. Interesting. I'd say the learnings that I've had from this is what worked. Manual micro is always best, where you can quickly move around. Obviously, that's what I'm used to after 600 hours of bar or so. And all RTSs, you know, you get a feel for what works on the battlefield, and you think, oh, I'll move these guys away further, I'll move these guys around here. That's always going to work better than just a quick Control Q and split And then what we end up doing then is we ran into the units. So CTRL Q, I'm sure it's really good for splitting some units for a very quick tactical surround in the heat of the moment. But as for big formations, yeah, I don't know. You might have to just do manual formations with the right click. Seems to be a little bit better and just easier. Massive shout out to Dylan for buying me 4 coffees. Mega thank you, sir. I will be highly caffeinated this week. You don't have to buy me a coffee, anyone. I'm fine. But it does help support the channel. This is the reason I say is he left me a really nice comment. He said, as someone who's picked up bar on and off in the past, but dropped it because of its depth, your channel has been a goldmine for really learning the game now that I'm dedicating to it. Thank you for the content. Hope to play against you one day. Hit me up and we'll have a game together sometime.